I've always been a bit of a night owl, and living in a city that truly never sleeps meant there was always something to do, even in the early hours. My usual haunt was this old dimly lit diner on the edge of downtown. It wasn't anything fancy, just good coffee, decent pie, and a quiet booth where I could read or write without interruption. Most nights it was just me, the cook in the back, and the lone waitress, Maria, who knew my order by heart. One particularly foggy Tuesday, I was there later than usual, maybe 3 a.m. The fog was so thick you could almost taste it, muffling the usual city hum to an eerie silence. I was the only customer, and Maria was wiping down the counter, her movements slow and tired. The bell above the door chimed softly, and a man walked in. He was tall, dressed in a dark, oversized trench coat, and wearing a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. He moved with a strange, deliberate slowness, like he was wading through treacle. Maria, usually quick to greet newcomers, just froze, her rag hovering over the counter. He didn't say anything, just walked past the empty booths and sat down at the very last one, tucked away in the deepest shadow. He didn't even take off his hat. Maria eventually snapped out of it and walked over to his booth, her steps hesitant. "Can I get you anything?" she asked, her voice a little higher than usual. He didn't reply immediately. I watched him from my booth, feeling a prickle of unease. He leaned forward slightly, and I thought I saw a glint of something under the brim of his hat, not eyes, but something else, almost reflective. Then his voice came, a low, raspy whisper that seemed to fill the silent diner. "I'm just waiting." Maria swallowed hard. "Waiting for someone," he rasped, "who's going to arrive very soon." Maria, clearly uncomfortable, just nodded and retreated to the counter. She kept glancing at him, then at me, then at the door. I tried to go back to my book, but I couldn't focus. The air in the diner felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. Minutes crawled by. The man in the trench coat remained motionless, a dark silhouette in the shadows. The fog outside seemed to press in closer against the windows. Maria was now just standing by the coffee machine, polishing the same spot over and over. Suddenly, the man spoke again, his voice still a whisper, but it seemed to carry effortlessly across the diner. "She's almost here." Maria gasped softly. I looked up. The street outside was still empty, shrouded in thick fog. Who was she? And how did he know? Then I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, like something scratching against the glass of the diner door. It was so light, I almost convinced myself it was the wind. But then it came again, a little louder, more deliberate. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Maria's eyes were wide with fear. She looked at the door, then back at the man, who was still perfectly still in his booth. The scratching continued, steady and relentless. It sounded like fingernails or something bony dragging across the glass. No one was visible through the foggy windows. The man in the trench coat slowly, almost imperceptibly raised a hand. He pointed a long, gloved finger towards the diner door. "She's here," he whispered, a hint of something that sounded like satisfaction in his voice. Just as he said that, the scratching stopped. There was a moment of absolute silence, so profound it was deafening. Then, a single, sharp rap echoed through the diner. It wasn't a knock. It was like something hard and heavy had struck the glass. The glass didn't shatter, but it vibrated, a low hum filling the air. Maria let out a small whimper. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. We were both staring at the door, paralyzed. The man in the booth began to slowly, deliberately stand up. His movements were still unnaturally fluid, like a ripple in dark water. As he rose, I noticed something else about him. His coat, though heavy, didn't quite seem to drape naturally. It was almost as if it was hiding something, or nothing. He started to walk towards the door, his footsteps making no sound on the linoleum floor. Maria was pressed against the coffee machine, her hand clamped over her mouth. I couldn't move. I just watched him, a growing dread tightening its grip on my chest. He reached the door, and without hesitation, he reached out his gloved hand towards the handle. His back was to us now. The fog outside swirled, making it impossible to see anything beyond the glass. Just as his hand touched the metal, the glass of the door fogged over from the outside, almost instantly. It wasn't the natural fog from the street. This was different, thicker, like a white cloud had suddenly condensed on the pane. And in that cloud, a faint dark shape began to form. It looked like a handprint, impossibly long and skeletal, pressing against the glass. The man in the trench coat paused, his hand still on the door handle. He slowly turned his head, just enough so that I could see a sliver of the space under his hat. And there, where his eyes should have been, was only an impenetrable, inky blackness. He then pulled the door open, and as he did, sweet, the fog outside didn't clear. It seemed to swirl into the diner, tendrils of white mist snaking along the floor. He stepped out into the swirling fog, and as he did, the dark handprint on the glass dissolved. He didn't look back. The door swung shut behind him with a soft click, leaving Maria and me alone in the sudden silence. We stayed like that for a long time, not moving, not speaking. The diner was quiet again, but the air still felt icy cold, and the metallic scent lingered. Maria was trembling. I was too. Eventually, the sun began to rise, slowly burning off the fog. The diner looked normal again, bathed in the pale morning light. But neither of us could forget what we had seen or felt. I never went back to that diner at night, and Maria quit a week later. Sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, I still smell that metallic scent, and I wonder who she was, and if the man in the trench coat is still waiting for someone, somewhere.